Thanks for joining me today. I have Terry Verduin with me, who is the creator of many things. But if you follow on LinkedIn and you've seen Goopy Ghost, Terry created that. And I'm really excited today because Terry has been my absolute favorite person to respond to on LinkedIn because I love tagging Goopy in my responses. I just think it's hilarious. I get a kick out of it every time. And so this is a big day for me that we're meeting face to face. Terry, thank you for joining me, and really looking forward to hearing what is, in my opinion, a pretty remarkable story.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And it is nice to be Goopy Ghost unmasked.
Yes, I almost feel like I'm in a Scooby Doo cartoon.
Goopy seems to get some attention because he is one of the few non-people on LinkedIn, I think.
Yeah.
And, uh,
So before we dive deep into who is Goopy, what's Goopy's mission, where's Goopy going, can you talk about just the entire collection of inventions that you have, real just as deep as you want to go?
yes, I would be happy to. I have currently a collection of 8 published books. 5 of them are in the Goopy Ghost series. Goopy Ghost is about celebration, happiness, joy, making holidays fun for kids, insight into the purpose of the holidays, which is getting people together, getting people celebrating. It's not about a collection of stuff. It's not about an accumulation of stuff. It's about building memories, building friendships. And I try to bring that across in the website. My ultimate goal for Goopy Ghost is that he become involved in retail. I can envision a Goopy Ghost club. I can envision Goopy Ghost paperback books being given out like at one time Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was by Montgomery Ward. And I envision the hardcover books being sold and as legacy books. And that's the goal for Goopy. Goopy forms part of Little Ray children's books. Another series that I wrote was A Little Ray is a Stingray, and the Little Ray Children's Books mission, it is a nonprofit, a 501c3. The mission is literacy, kids aren't reading, celebration, kids seem more depressed than ever, animal appreciation, and environmental protections. It's kind of a habits for habitats, flying stingray achievement, and ray and shark teamwork, the unexpected.
Okay, so the stingray reference it's a Florida thing.
It is all Florida animals. Of course, they're elsewhere as well. It's a Florida nonprofit. It is a public charity. The goal with the Little Ray books is to get them into aquariums, zoos, nature centers. I've reproduced books, 2 books that were released in softcover over a decade ago. And they were very popular. Probably my best sellers, and I'll qualify that probably shortly. And I redid them only as hardcovers. I did not release them as soft covers because I've been having a problem with the resource that I use for printing, selling, and shipping the books for which I create an audience and sales on social media, the websites, etc. And so that's created a bit of a problem for me. So the hardcovers I created separately, and I have kept the soft covers as they are in the original format, although it would take nothing to reissue them. I'm just not happy with that supply chain that I currently have.
Okay. And so how long have you been publishing books?
John, I started over 10 years ago. I want to say the first book went out in 2009. I'm trying to think, actually. I started with The Goopy Ghost of Halloween. That was my first book. And then I did Little Ray children's books. And then I gradually added a Ray and Shark book, a raccoon book to the Little Ray series, and a Goopy Ghost. I've got 5 holidays. I've got Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and St. Patrick's Day. And the St. Patrick's book is written entirely in Irish limerick verse.
Oh,
Which
that's really
was
neat.
quite an accomplishment. Yeah, it really was. The editor, final editor, I worked on these books, each of these books, John, probably for a decade before I published them. I got sick and I went to a doctor. The doctor said, it looks like you have leukemia. So I contacted my then editor and I said, Rennie, I think I better publish these books. How do I go about publishing these books? And she said, Terry, the only way you're going to get your books published, the only way anybody can get their books published anymore is to self-publish. And she didn't give me any leads as to where to go about getting them self-published. But I went with what seemed to be the only, reasonable supplier out there, big in the book industry. And I eventually did 8 books through them. I've done a 9th book recently, a raccoon story, to join the Little Ray series. It's in hardcover only, as are the 2 total upgrades to new additions to the Little Ray original books.
So where can people buy your books? You mentioned a supply chain problem. Where do you want people to go if they want to buy your books?
I would prefer they go to my websites, thegoopyghost.com, links to littleraychildrensbooks.org, and the books are sold on littleraychildrensbooks.org. I do not sell the original 2 Little Ray children's books on there, The Amazing Flight of Little Ray and softcover, or the Little Ray and Shark Patch Things Up, because I so totally rewritten the book and I so prefer the new version that I'm leaving, I don't sell the original one, but I sell the updated version in hardcover. Ultimately, I'll add softcover if need be, only to be sold on my website. I have not done that yet, but that's an ultimate goal. The new releases, I think everybody starts out with hardcover first, and then they bring out this softcover. And that's my plan as well.
Okay. Obviously you've got some experience here. What advice would you give someone who's looking to publish a children's book today?
My advice to them would be, do not place your eggs in one basket. Do not use the same printer who sells your books and ships your books because they can leave you out of the loop and cheat you on royalties. Do not go with somebody who will price books at their discretion, because they will undercut your pricing to the point that there's no way to pay you royalties out of that sales price, and you cannot compete with that sales price on your own website. Those would be 2 biggies. I would say, once you're being cheated, in my experience, I would send in a verification. These books were purchased, and oh well, nothing would happen. So it became pointless. And you will not know the extent to which you're cheated, because I had 8 books and I often knew that titles had sold and I didn't get credit for them. I was beginning to get the idea, and it's now become widely known. There are articles across the web about people who share this experience of, they can't compete with the low cost. They're not getting paid royalties out of that low cost. They're not being paid royalties on all of their sales.
Okay, that's fair. So how does someone go about the process of you got a script, you got a hard copy of a book or even electronic copy of a book? How do you go about getting that made into a book? I've never published before. I don't know anything about that.
Basically, my illustrator makes the book's illustration ready. And there's a website, Readsy, where you can connect with illustrators and you can pick, the style you like, and you can reach out to the illustrators and they can illustrate your book, typeset your book, compile your book into a file that can be uploaded. When I redid my books as hardcover, I went with Ingram Spark, and I did not request that the books be put on Amazon shelves. I want them on my own bookshelf. And
Okay.
I recommend that you get your books, you get control of your books. If, for example, I wanted to individually send books to Amazon for sale through their, what's it called? Oh shoot, FBA, I think, full something Amazon, full fulfillment by Amazon, that's it. It would be much more expensive. It would cost about $4 more per book, because you're paying for storage, you're paying for a unit to hold it, you're paying for a unit price to list it, and you're paying a percentage, and it's basically prohibitive. You cannot make money that way. You're also not going to make money if you're not getting credit for the books being sold.
So I spoke with another author who had said that they utilize the Amazon method, where essentially when you buy the book gets printed and sent. That would not necessarily singling out Amazon, but that would be the method that you would advise. Don't do that.
I would advise don't do that, because you have no control of it.
Okay.
You've thrown all your eggs in one basket. If, for example, and it's passive income, and they view it as independent authors aren't supposed to sell books. And, they don't want to sell your book. They just basically do not, because they don't make a lot of money selling your book. And so ultimately, I guess, by not crediting you for the sale of that book, either they hope you'll go away and take it down, or they're making a little bit more on your book than they would have made otherwise. And your book will get out there. They will ship your book. If you want your book out there, it will get out there. But if you're paying for a website, you paid to develop the book, and a children's book right now is about $6,500 to develop the illustration, then type, and getting it up there, and then you're paying for the copies of it. And it's to receive a hard copy of one of my books is $10.88, and they sell for $17.95, and a hard copy. The soft copies, it's more like, I think it's like $5.50 or something like that, and received. Because if you're in Amazon Prime and you are an author buying your books as author copies, you pay for shipping. It doesn't come with Prime. And if you buy your books on Amazon off the bookshelf like any other purchaser, and you buy them discounted. Sometimes you can get them cheaper than you can get them buying them yourself. And then you get prime shipping. But then you're competing with that cheap price when you try to sell the book. And it's impossible. You won't sell any books because it's below cost.
Okay, that's good information and that's great advice. Thank you for being willing to share that. So the Goopy concept, I'm curious the story behind that. How did you come up with that character? What was the motivation there?
I am an insomniac, and most of my ideas come to me in my insomniac moments in the middle of the night. And I had decided that I wanted to come up with a story for each month. And, you know, I'd tell stories to my daughter. And I decided I wanted to come up with a story for each month. And I'd gotten to October and I didn't have any ideas. And I was laying in bed thinking, and all of a sudden I sat up in bed laughing. And Dick said, "What's the matter with you?" And I told him about the Goopy ghost from the pumpkin. And he's a goop from the pumpkin. He comes alive. And Dick said, "Get out of here." So I went into my office and I started writing The Goopy Ghost of Halloween. And it took me about 10 years to write it. And
wow.
Yeah, because it's in rhyme and I wanted it to be right. And I was in a writer's group and I had a professional editor, Rennie Brown, at the editorial department. This is before I met Graham Lofts. Graham is an Australian award-winning author, and he did final versions of all of my other books, including the rewrite of The Amazing Flight of Little Red. And he's been involved since the beginning almost.
Okay. And you mentioned at the start of this that you had other characters. Do you mind talking about some of those other characters that you've created and kind of the inspiration behind them?
I would be happy to. When I first moved to Florida, I saw a stingray fly out of the water, and I had no clue stingrays flew. And so from that sighting came The Amazing Flight of Little Ray. And that is a story that continues to get credit for sales. I believe because it sells many more than I get credit for. And it ranks well, and kids find great inspiration in it. Little Ray seems to motivate kids. One grandmother told me that she went to check on her autistic grandson after reading the story to him, and he'd taken the book off of the bookshelf and was sleeping with it.
Oh.
It was amazing. A teacher told me that a reading of The Amazing Flight of Little Ray aloud in class prompted the first response ever from a developmentally challenged child in her class. He was in the 4th grade. Never really took an interest in anything before that. And a mother told me that her kid finally understood why he could ride his bike around their block, but he wasn't allowed to cross any streets to neighboring blocks. I get all sorts of stories about Little Ray and how in his singular focus and strong will and perseverance in the face of adversity appeals to kids and adults. He's kind of an unusual character. Then I matched him up with a shark, and Little Ray and Shark patched things up. And teachers were telling me, this is a great anti-bullying book. Here you've got this ray and this stingray and then the shark, and they're natural enemies and they're related. And they managed to work out their difficulties. Why can't people? And it's not a different colored person against a different colored person or a different personality type. Nobody takes offense at a ray and a shark. Whereas they might take offense at, 2 people, one in a position that somebody else may find offensive.
Yeah, yeah, that you know, it's there, and I think that's why a lot of kids' books are written from that perspective, is just to keep it generic. Um, you know, and that's um I love that story. And you know, I think anti-bullying books are super important. You know, you mentioned earlier that kids are not as happy as they used to be. And it's, as a parent, it's heartbreaking to see that. And you're right, you are absolutely right. There's more and more things negatively happening to kids today. You know, and I, quite frankly, I'm not a stats guy, so I'm not going to go out and do any research on it. It's my opinion, and that's where it is. But I've sometimes said that, you know, the world isn't any worse today than it was 100 years ago. There's just a bigger population, and so there's more bad guys out there. Um, Either way,
More publicity because of social media.
yeah, you know, that's my wife's take on it as well, is that social media is causing a lot of the erosion of our society. And so, you know, here's the way I look at it: is I don't really care what's causing it. I just know it exists. And I love the fact that you've identified it as a parent as well. And you know, there's a couple other writers that I've connected with. I don't know if you follow Trevor Martin. He's a guy who lives out in Iowa, and he's got a anti-bully series as well. And you know, I think that more of that needs to get attention, because you know, as a society, we got to pay attention to that behavior. We have to weed out that behavior. And I'm not saying attack the person, but we have to teach the person how to control their emotions better and how to be a better human. So I love the fact that you're writing books about it. And you know, I know that books have been written about it for generations. I just want to do my part of putting it out there, to, at least to my audience, to say, hey, these things exist. Check them out. Specifically, in your situation, Terry, small business person, get the word out there, get people to support your cause. And I will put in the comments section of this video and everywhere I share it online, links to your websites where people can go and they can support you directly, and support your products.
Thank you. And
Oh,
with donations, we hope to be able to get these books to aquariums, to nature centers, to zoos. The Little Rice areas also is about not bullying animals. Sharks in particular, rays, you know, animals that are maligned, or raccoons. I tended to write about the most maligned nuisance animals in Florida: sharks, rays, raccoons, and armadillos. And I tried to make people see them from their viewpoint. These aren't bad animals. These animals have bad press. One person gets bitten, they rarely get killed by a shark. More people are probably killed by distracted walking, looking at their cell phones, than are killed by sharks. They get bitten, they get dropped. Sharks don't like our bony subsistence. They are taste testers. And if they taste test us and we're a bony chunk of, you know, trunk, they don't want that. They leave us alone. But thousands of them, millions of them are getting killed in revenge killings because people hate sharks.
yeah, you know,
Fear sharks, and sharks, you know, and stingrays for that matter.
yeah, and I think you do. You see that, and it's depending on where your focus is. I see it against alligators and snakes as
Yes,
well, and
yes.
yeah.
Lizards, you know,
So
armadillos. I
yeah,
try to make those cuddly and fun. And armadillos are fascinating animals. Fascinating. You know, all their kids, all their pups in the litter are of the same sex. There's no discrimination there. They will share burrows with other armadillos of the same sex, of different sex. They don't care. They can delay birth. Imagine if we could clone that. and we'd have our kids at the opportune time, not when, we don't, least expect it.
I did not know that. That's an
No,
interesting fact.
and they can navigate with these hairs on their side like curb feelers. And they're fast, they can swim, they can walk underwater for 6 minutes. They inflate with their intestines to float, and they can paddle across water. Amazing animals, amazing, fascinating animals. And they do dig, but their burrows don't collapse like pirates treasure trove.
Yeah. And I think that these are all interesting things that I think it's great to teach people about them. I remember growing up, and if I remember correctly, I think there was like a Rocky Raccoon TV show or something. And for the longest time, I thought raccoons were friendly, and I was a grown adult before I realized, yeah, they're not as friendly as you think they are. And
We
now,
had a pet raccoon. No, they're not friendly. When they're about 1 year old, they're mean spirited and nasty, but they're intelligent. They can be taught to ride a bike, they can pick locks. They are intelligent. They are little Einsteins, as they were described in the Wall Street Journal.
yeah, they really are. And where I live, we have a wilderness out behind us, and me trying to be friendly to the deer, put out a deer feeder, filled it full of corn, thinking, oh, the deer are going to come on up and they're going to eat, and that's going to be great. The raccoons did instead.
Yeah.
And my wife, who grew up on a farm and has more experience with wild animals than I will ever get in my life, I'm watching this on the security camera, and I'm like, I just can't believe they did this. And my wife just looked at me. She said, "What did you really think was going to happen when you put a bucket of corn out behind our house?" I said, "I thought the deer were going to come eat it." And she's like, "You have now attracted every raccoon." And there were, Terry, I can't even tell you how many raccoons. They climbed. Our deck is easily 12 or 13 feet off the ground. They climbed the posts of that. Like, they were all over the back of our house. Um, Not a good day.
Not a good day.
Well,
I
then,
walked to the fitness center, and one day I saw these little lumps along the sidewalk, and I thought, oh man, what is this? They weren't there yesterday or any other day I walked in. And as I got closer, I'd see the rump in the air running into the woods. It was at least a dozen raccoons, at least, just having a confab out by the sidewalk.
that's funny. Yeah, I ran a marathon a few years back, or a half marathon, and I would get up in the morning and I would go and we'd run, and I would put a headlamp on so that I could see where I was going. And what I learned was deer eyes are green when they're at night, when the lights hit them. Well, I wasn't thinking. I thought deer were a dawn and dusk thing. I didn't think that they were a 4 o'clock in the morning when it's dark. And so we're running along, and I look over and I see all these eyes staring back at us. And I told my wife, I'm like, "Step it up. There's a pack of raccoons over there." And my wife saw what it actually was. And I'm like, "Did you see them? They were like climbing the trees and stuff because they're all at different heights." And she just let me go about that, thinking that they were deer. And this kept happening, or I'm sorry, thinking that they're raccoons. And I'm like, "They're going to come get us. They're going to come after us," because I'm now traumatized because they took the house. And so I'm out there just every morning running. I'm like, "Oh, there's the raccoons again." She let me go on like this for probably a couple weeks, until I was telling the story one day. And then she hears me telling the story, and she has that moment of, "Oh, I better let him know that he's an idiot." And so before I got too far along in the story to someone else, she comes over. She's like, "Those are all deer. They're not raccoons." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Because there were a lot of them. And we have packs of deer that I think that's what you call them. I don't know.
Herds.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
And it's kind of a protected area, so there's a lot of them that come here, and people will go and they'll grow pumpkins and whatever and let the deer eat them. So it's a healthy environment for them. So then what I did is the next time I saw it, I got closer. I'm like, darn it, she's right. Those are, and what it was deer heads at different angles watching us run, and it wasn't the raccoons climbing trees and just stalking us. So
Wow.
anyway, there's a pointless story for your morning.
I was also a runner and ran at night and tend to bike at night. When you live in Florida, you try to avoid the sun. And I would see a lot of deer and raccoons and armadillos, and it's fun. At night, you see things that you would never see during the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So that seems like an oxymoron to me, that you live in Florida to avoid the sun. It doesn't seem like that would be the reason why I would move. I live in Michigan, and I would move to Florida that fast.
The sun can be very, very hot, and it can burn you in 8 minutes. And if
Yeah.
you've ever had blistering sunburn and you want to be out for a few hours and not constantly slathering on the sunscreen, it's better for me anyway to ride my bike. Plus, I see animals. I'll see every single day. I see a possum, raccoons, deer. I wouldn't see that during the day.
That's true.
I don't see that. Even I see gators occasionally during the day. You hear them at night.
Yeah, that's the one, like the gator thing is one that it shouldn't be that hard to get used to, but I was in Florida, and I think it was the Tampa Orlando area for work a couple years back, and the property that we have has a pond out behind it, and I wasn't thinking, and I'm outside just walking around on a break, and I'm looking at the pond, and I'm looking down, and as I'm looking down, I'm thinking to myself, huh, that's interesting that like this section right here has kind of worn out. Like, and like this is not a pond people would swim in. It's kind of dirty and nasty. And as I'm looking down, I realize like something has obviously been going under the barbed wire fence. I'm thinking, I wonder what would be doing that. And there I had been told that there was some farmland nearby where they had some cows. And so I thought, well, maybe the cows have been coming over here and drinking the pond water. And then I just had that moment where I'm like, you big dummy, you're in Florida and you're standing next to a pond and you're looking down an area that's obviously been worn out by something sliding into the water. And immediately I'm stepping back and I'm looking around and I look up, and lucky for me, on the other side of the pond, it was the alligator watching me. And I thought that was not smart.
It's fascinating. They're in almost every single pond in Florida. And I remember I used to take my bike out, and the gates would not work for my bike. It just wasn't heavy metal enough. And so I would have to walk on the grass on the edge of the pond around the gate to get out. And one morning I thought, oh, there's a bird. I see this thing. And then I looked again. I said, oh my God, it was an alligator with his mouth wide open. And it looked like a bird standing there with that wide open. I said, who? And I walked within 3 feet of it and thinking it was a bird, wondering why it didn't fly away. And then when I looked back, it slid in the water. I said, oh, but I always kept my bike between me and whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So, Terry, I really am grateful that you took the time to talk to me this morning. And I hope that once this goes live, I hope that it helps to support your book sales. And I am just grateful for your support online. I hope to continue to support your cause. Are there future books planned that we can talk about?
There are several books planned, many books planned. I was an attorney, and this might be of interest to you. And my focus was mental health, guardianship, substance abuse, Baker Act, which was involuntary treatment for mental illness. And so I saw so much negativity, so much depression. I'd see somebody go from bipolar to schizophrenic over the course of 2 years using street drugs. And, I saw a lot of depressing cases. I mean, it was just really depressing. Families against families, and families against kids, and kids against parents. And I decided I wanted my books to be positive, motivational, inspirational, and that's basically where they head. I have more Goopy Ghost books. I've got one for Easter, one for birthday, one for New Year's, and one for 4th of July. I have a Little Ray book that is kind of a fair play, day at the beach, families, little swan gets swept out to sea, and it starts flying around, and the big brother gets a jet ski and goes out to retrieve it. The water is churning, and he stands back and waits. Well, porpoise, a dolphin, has decided that he wanted to make this one his, and he's playing with it. And of course, Little Ray saw the whole thing, and he goes out. Little Ray's trying to get it back to shore, and the dolphin's trying to get it away. And the brother waits. Eventually, it gets back to the shore. But it's a fair play, a waiting your turn, a respect for nature, but a fun, Little Ray book. I've got a turtle story that I hope to bring out. The raccoon story that I just brought out was actually the only story that is not rhyming. It was basically a story that my mother came up with. She's 90. For her 90th birthday, I decided I'd publish this story. About 70 years ago, she saw a skunk in the predicament in this raccoon story. And she has raccoons in her backyard, and she loves the raccoons. She doesn't attract them like you did. I think she knows better. But when she sees the light go on, she looks and watches and sees what they're doing. And they don't raid or bird feed her either, which is a good thing. But she loves raccoons, and she had the idea that raccoons would resolve the situation with the skunk that she could not resolve 70 years ago, and it's haunted her ever since. It was a skunk with its head stuck in a mayonnaise jar and down to the shoulders. And this story finally brings a fix to that terrible problem, but it raises awareness that a lot of environmental harm happens to animals by carelessness, leaving jars, leaving bones, leaving plastic wrappers out for animals to get tangled up in. So that's one book. I've got many of them. I've got a limerick, a stay in school limerick, where a kid doesn't want to go to school. He wants to be rich and famous and have everything automatically. And he sees a shooting star and he knows this is his day. Well, he's walking towards school and he trips over a attaché case, a briefcase, and he opens it. It's full of cash. And he knew the star had made his dream come true. This book's written all in Irish limerick verse. Well, of course, 4 thugs come after him. And he's got a lot of explaining to do when he's caught running with 4 thugs carrying cash and skipping school. But it's a fun story. I've got many of them, John. I've got one about a weather vane, and that doesn't want to be a weather vane. It wants to be like all of the other birds, and that's a fun story of everybody has a purpose, and we need to find our purpose and live our purpose. And he eventually gets back into his purpose, but he creates a stir in the neighborhood while he's flying free. And
That's exciting. I love to see the happiness in your voice as you're talking about this stuff.
yeah, and the police get involved, and it's a fun when they see the neighbors chasing this man with brooms and mops. It's a fun, and they decide it had to have been blown by the wind, but the owner knows that it really flew.
That's
So
neat.
fun stuff. But no, there are many, many stories. I've got a mule story. I used to horse show, and I thought it'd be fun to put a mule in a horse show. And of course, it's a jumping show, and mules can jump. Oh boy. And this mule, of course, wins. And just fun stories. And
So I'm listening to you, and I'm hearing about all these stories and the motivation behind the stories. And I've got to ask the question because someone out there is thinking it as well. Is there a autobiography of Terry being written somewhere?
I hope not, because in truth, I was a court interpreter translator, then I was an attorney. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist, but my illustration skills were negligible, I would say. And so writing was something that I really enjoyed doing. And I prefer not to write boilerplate. I prefer to write creative, inspirational, fun things. But getting them read, getting them, out there, I'm really hoping that by setting up the nonprofit, it can merge with a bigger nonprofit. And if I can make a splash with the Little Ray in the aquarium, zoo, nature center, there's no reason why this couldn't go to a bigger nature conservancy that wants proprietary products, that, books of their own for kids to bring them up, appreciating nature, enriching them, motivating them with nature. We started flying because birds were flying. We started going under the sea because fish were swimming down there. We got our ideas, many of them, from nature. Many ideas from nature. And it's good for kids to start early appreciating nature and getting outside a bit.
Well, I love that. And I do hope that you have at least documented some of your story for your family, so that the ideas, somebody out there is walking the path that you've walked. And I hope that your story does get out there, because there are other ideas that need to be born from that person who is doing some of the things that you talked about, the stingray and seeing it come out of the water, and then this idea is born from that. I think that people get their motivation when they say, you know what, this lady in Florida wrote this story because she had this experience. Well, I just had this experience. It gave me an idea. And how many people that are being bullied can read your book and feel inspiration from that because you had the idea and you had the courage to make the idea become real? So,
or not bully animals, that they're just trying to survive and living their life, and they've got enough challenges with our pollution, and they don't need any more.
yeah.
And our overfishing and our over hunting and our over whatever else we're doing. Birds are disappearing. I've got a bird series, Dolly the Parrot, a talking parrot series. And birds can teach us a lot. Parrots actually can speak and think in language, in words. They can speak our languages, English, Spanish, French, whatever, they can speak it, think in it to the level of a 5-year-old kid. And training a parrot and training a developmentally challenged kid can work together. Much of the training mechanism for training animals works with kids. And there's so much in this exchange. People would love to be able to talk with their dogs, and during COVID, devices came out with buttons where dogs could push the buttons, and some of them didn't want anything to do with that. Some of them could communicate emotions. We think we understand our dogs and our horses and our cats, but no, we teach them our language, and parrots actually learn that language. So do other, birds. Ravens can talk, parakeets can talk, budgies can talk. So many birds can talk. And that's pretty fascinating. The lyrebird really fascinates me because it can imitate, power saws, alarms, and go off in the night and really torment people.
Yeah.
It's a real mimic.
Well, I am inspired by the products that you've created just out of your life experiences, and I know that others will be as well. I'm super grateful that we met, and I'm very grateful that you've taken the time to talk to me. And I look forward to these other products coming alive. And I'm also looking forward to hitting up your website and checking out your books. And I appreciate you offering the advice to up and coming publishers. I think that's great advice, and retaining control of your intellectual property is it is critical. And I hope that if anybody's listening to this who has plans to write a book, that you take that seriously. And everyone I've talked to has said, if you are not already a celebrity, writing a book is going to cost you money, not make you any money.
That is exactly true. You need to be, and you need somebody influential behind you, or it's a total lost cause. I am hopeful that somebody of influence will want to pick up these books and carry forward the concept. Because I realize, A, at my age, and B, my financial wherewithal is not sufficient, based on existing experience. One thing you said, it is true, the Freedom of Information Act, you send something off to the trademark office in a PDF, you're going to find it all over the internet. Amazon is scraped, your ebooks are scraped. Once you really, I took my ebooks down, and because ebooks did not sell for me. Print books sold better for kids, but you have to be very careful because your books get all over the place.
Okay, that's good advice.
And they go on free websites where they're trying to drive traffic with your free book that you don't want there.
Well, I see on the bookshelf behind you, is that a prototype of Goopy Ghost?
That was made by Art, a friend. And that is the video that you first looked at of that prototype that Art made using Legos. That is a Lego Goopy Ghost.
Okay. And then what are the other products on the shelf above?
That's the Raccoon Story is above, and surrounding him is The Amazing Flight of Little Ray. And below him is Little Ray and Shark Patch Things Up. These are close-ups of the book, The Amazing Flight of Little Ray. Little Ray and Shark Patch Things Up. And then the Raccoon Story, which was really from my mother's idea.
That's cool.
And then the Goopy Ghost Stories, I've got the Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and St. Patrick's Day up. Kids like them throughout the year. I took the Goopy Ghost website and I linked it, I hope more interactively, with the Little Ray Children's Books website. Goopy Ghost has his own website, and he's such a vast property that I have two different websites. One for the nonprofit, which of course includes Goopy Ghost, but not as extensively as his own website. Trying to get the idea do things with people, get people doing things together, parents with kids, older siblings with younger siblings, you know, reading has fallen out of favor and it needs to get back into favor if we are going to be a literate society. And all over social media, you see terrible literacy skills.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'll tell you, our house is definitely a reading house, and
I was reading when you came online. I was looking for you, but yeah, you know, we're readers too.
that's exciting. So, Terry, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to put all of your links in the comments of this. I'm going to share them everywhere the video is shared. Thank you so much. I hope the one thing I'll ask is if you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel.
I am subscribed and I will watch.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you've been a great supporter of me. I'm grateful. I believe you're the first person to actually comment on one of my videos. Thank you for that.
I think I'll comment on all of them because I tend to do that.
Grateful for that support. And if you do hit the bell, you'll be notified when a video goes live. I do recognize that could be annoying, specifically if I'm uploading a bunch of videos. Any support tossed my way, I appreciate it. My goal here is to elevate others, to be a better human every day, and to motivate others to do so. So Terry, thank you very much. Very grateful to have met you, and I want to thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
All right.